Hello everyone, my name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master, and welcome back to D20 Sundays. Probably wondering why I'm sitting here in my flannel pajamas. It's like 2 in the morning. Yeah, I'm recording this literally 2 in the morning, Sunday, today. So whenever this actually gets uploaded, it's that day. I'm tired. Very, very tired. But you're probably wondering, Ian, what the hell are you doing recording at 2 in the morning for D20 Sunday? Shouldn't you have done this recording hours ago? And you're right, I should have. But I didn't. I wanted to talk a moment about some things that plague me and how I use them in characters. Because I feel like when you are developing a character for Dungeons & Dragons, you should make them more than just numbers on a piece of paper or a few sparse notes about them. No, you should actually try and give them full depth and so on. So, as with all of us, there's flaws. So what's my flaw? Well, there's a few. First and foremost, I didn't wake up until about noon Saturday. The reason being is that Friday night I had a bout with insomnia like I am right now. Insomnia being that I can't sleep. I want to sleep. Trust me, I want to sleep. But I can't. Up here is too wired, too active, too, gotta do something to let me sleep. My mind doesn't reach the lower REM cycle. I might reach it for a brief moment, but then my mind starts working on something and, I'm back up again. So, that's part of one of the reasons why this wasn't recorded at a much more reasonable hour. I got to record The Wolf Among Us for Friday. Got that done. But then, I guess the best term I could say is executive dysfunction. The fact that, I knew I had to do this recording, I knew I had to get it done, that I have to get it edited and uploaded and ready, and I've got to do the thumbnail, but, it just goes like, oh, well, I know I gotta do it. And I didn't do it. And then I was like, oh, hey, let's just try and, explain to the human aspect of me and what I do with that in my character. So, going on from this depressing opening and actually talking about Dungeons & Dragons or character development in general, I fully believe that you should give your characters flaws. Many of the characters that I have some sort of flaw. Dr. Eugene Fiddlesticks, or Gob as he's better known as now, he has the flaw of extreme pridefulness. He is extremely proud. Even though he looks down at other goblins, he is proud of his goblin heritage, to the point that he refused at one point. Essentially, there was a moment where we could essentially magically blend in with all the other elves by eating this one special fruit that would turn us into an elf, and we didn't know if it was short term, long term, or, permanent. And, one of the other NPCs ate it, and one of the other players ate it, but Gob refused. And they're like, look, if you don't eat it, they'll be able to see through your magic to see that you are a goblin. And you and the elves, your people have been at war for centuries. And Gob's like, no, I will not lower myself to such a standard. And that was his flaw. His biggest flaw is his pride. He is so prideful as to who he is, what he has become, that he sees reverting back to just being a normal goblin, or reverting to another race to hide what he is disgusting and abhorrent. Especially if it has anything to do with the Fae. Oh god. If it deals with the Fae, he just wants to destroy it and, have it rid from the world, because that's how he sees the world, or sees how he can make the world better. But his pride also makes him very difficult to deal with in a party setting at times, because it's like, the group's going to be like, we believe we should do this, and Gob's like, we shouldn't do that. He's like, what do you mean we shouldn't do that, you know? It's probably our best course of action. It's like, well, you know, I think otherwise. Or rather, God thinks otherwise because of, you know, not only of his arrogance or his pridefulness, it's because times he can be a little arrogant and other times he can be kind of prejudiced towards, you know, elves and fae and anything that's not really goblin. Especially elves and fae. Another flaw that I decided to use and kind of amplify when putting into a character, I made the character ACOs Vince, or his real full name is Acosilianos Vincenia Sata, or something like that. I don't know, I'm tired. But he goes by ACOs Vince. It's a very shortening of his name, and he is a very, very prideful elf, and I do mean prideful to a fault, but at the same time, he is, I believe the term is sociopathic, and he doesn't process emotions. That's one of my own personal difficulties, and I've been doing my best to get over that, but the idea of, like, you know, what am I feeling right now, I'm not entirely sure. It's very difficult for me to process my own emotions, so I took that and amplified that and put it into Akos, and the fact that he doesn't react emotionally to anything. He just, it's not there. He is, you know, strict by the book. Law is the law. He is lawful evil, and he is, everything must be organized and follow a very strict pattern, otherwise it is abhorrent and must be destroyed. But he is essentially an individual who is stripped of emotion because he saw no need of it. So he never developed those skills. He never developed the emotions, so he doesn't even see his comrades as family. He sees them as tools. He sees them as people that are beneficial to have around and beneficial to use for his means. And it's terrible, but that's his flaw. And that's what I wanted to, you know, kind of exemplify with this episode, was the idea that your character's flaws can be exemplified to give them a bit more character, to give them a bit more depth, and there might be reasons behind why they have these flaws that can also be explored in either downtime with the party, or perhaps the Dungeon Master could use it. If you give your Dungeon Master material, they're always going to be happy with you, because that means they have to work less. And if there's one thing that we hate as Dungeon Masters, is working more. If we give you something and you use it, great. If we try and work with your backstory, but you're being an ass about it, it makes it hard. And if you try to work with your backstory, but your backstory is like 3 sentences long, of, I came from this town, I killed this monster, I wanted more riches. That's not helping us. That's hurting us. And the fact that now we have to think of more, and make more than what's necessary to try and rope your character in, and give them a bit more character, give them a bit more depth, and make them invested. Not only you as the player invested, but why would your character be invested in this situation? But yeah, so using your flaws to essentially exemplify your character, but also use them in a manner that would essentially benefit the party and the Dungeon Master is another thing. What's another character that I have that is extremely flawed? Ooh, Ruger. I forgot about Ruger. Ruger is one of those old ones. I haven't played Ruger in forever. The reason being is Ruger is, well, he's a hypochondriac. Not one of something I'm weird. I don't really care if I get sick, and I'm not really concerned if I get sick, but Ruger, I decided to, you know, make his flaw into the fact that he's a hypochondriac. He believes that he is ill. He's believed that, you know, he's gotten an illness of some kind, even though he actually doesn't. If you talk about a certain sickness around him, he'll start thinking that he's got it too. Or, you know, if this, you know, start describing the symptoms of a disease, he's like, oh no, I've got it too. And the Dungeon Master at one point wanted to use that, and essentially made it to where Ruger was developing magical abilities, and because of that, he was constantly making himself sick, because Ruger was convinced that he had this, you know, illness, so his magic, his innate magic, made him have that sickness, and he was just, oh, I'm withering away. Eventually, the rest of the party found a way of like, what was it called? There was a certain process. Essentially, the mana, the magical power that was inside Ruger was stripped away, and it cured him. But at the same time, he's like, I'm cured of that one, but what if another one takes me? And the players were like, Ian, I'm like, he's a hypochondriac. He fully believes that if he hears about an illness, it must be affecting him too. But I haven't played Ruger in forever. It was kind of fun. Weird. And he did hold up a lot of things. I will say one of the most common flaws that I see on tables, not only in tables that I've dungeon mastered, but also tables that I've sat at, is prejudice or racism or discrimination of some kind. Like, well, my character hates elves. Well, my character hates dwarves. Well, my character hates warforged, or something of the like. Those all have been used and existed, and I'm not saying they're less valid or there are certain ones that are more valid than others. Fuck you, gnomes. I'm saying that try and pull out a better flaw than just a prejudice, and if you do decide to go with the prejudice, make sure it's very well thought out and given a reason. The reason why Gob, or Dr. Eugene Fiddlesticks, is so prejudiced against the elves and the Fae in his world is because his people were originally on this one chunk of land, essentially. Then the elves came, and they displaced his people. Then the Fae came and displaced the elves and his people. And it, pushed his people from their ancestral homelands all the way back to, essentially the Badlands, to, desolate wilds and so on, to where survival is a very difficult and very harsh. And it's like, well, this is why he hates them. Because they have essentially displaced his people from their native and ancestral homes. They've dug up their lands, and because the goblins in this world that I play in aren't just your normal stupid goblins. They're still kind of stupid, but they are much more tribalistic, much more intelligent in the sense that, or wise rather, in the sense that they have rituals and to speak with their ancestors through their blood by doing a certain ritual, and they learn from their past, from their ancestors' history, and learn from them, things to beware, things that they should know, and so on. So that's been super, big in their development and making sure that they know the reason why they live out in the wastes when they could be living in the verdant forest, or they could be living in the open plains with, fields of food. Instead, they are, to the Badlands. Because, fuck you, elves. What time is it? I'm super tired. Anyways, I'm sorry you gotta see me like this. Normally I would try and pep myself up. This is sugar, by the way, pretty much just sugar. It's the IBC root beer made with sugar cane, artificially flavored. This is caffeine free. Yeah, it's caffeine free. Caffeine doesn't really do anything for me, but sugar in the drink, sometimes that works. It's very delicious. But, fun times. But going forward, think about flaws, think about things that you could do to make your characters much more interesting, much more in depth, and how those flaws tie into their backgrounds, so that way the Dungeon Master can use them to either his or her advantage, or to your advantage. Excuse me. Anyways, I'll catch you next time. Laters.